catch the listeners up?
Yes.
I was at the point where I was trying to figure out who the big fat guy was in Hudsucker Proxy.
Ah, yes. And we were doing that because Steve Buscemi is in Hudsucker Proxy.
Right, and I could not figure out who he was. I love that movie. Have you seen the Hudsucker Proxy?
Maybe.
It's another Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, it's the one with that one guy.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's got a lot of that one guys because it's Tim Robbins, Paul Newman, Bruce Campbell was. Oh yeah, Bruce Campbell was
Bruce
Smitty.
Campbell's in there,
and Charles Durning, who I love. And Jennifer Jason Leigh, she was fantastic in it. And it's sort of it's like, what is it, like 1929? It takes place in big corporation. The head of the corporation, the CEO, he kills himself for reasons unknown, and the company is doing really successful, and all of his stock was left with no heir. So the board of directors, they want to buy up his stock so they maintain control of the company. So in order to depress the stock, they bring in a completely untested person who just graduated from business college to run the company, hoping that it will panic the investors. And, from that setup, you can tell how hilarious the movie is.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds great.
It's actually really hilarious. Yeah. Tim Robbins in it is fantastic, but then he's usually really good. Right. And Jennifer Jason Leigh is great.
That's basically what I remember about the film. But the reason we got onto the Hudsucker Proxy
is because Steve Buscemi doesn't die nearly enough in movies for my tastes.
Right. And my assertion was that he dies a lot in movies. At least he did in the 80s through the 90s. I mean, he died a lot in a bunch of that.
And we got onto him because of the Game of Thrones thing.
Yeah, which you pointed out that Sean Bean plays the guy who dies almost, right away.
Well, not right. Like I said, the books, and if you haven't read the first book of Game of Thrones or watched the show, a spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But at this point, you've either decided to or not. I think I'm the last adopter of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'm certainly not adopting it anytime soon.
I think it's really good, honestly. I think the books are really good.
I have no interest.
Well, anyway, I was saying that the first book does this bait and switch because they set you up with this one fantastic main character and you think he's going to carry the series. And then 2/3 of the way through the book, he's executed for treason, and that's the end of him. And when Tiny and I started watching the series, I knew nothing about the series before we started watching it. Series comes on, he comes on camera, and it's him. And then I see it's played by Sean Bean, and I just started cracking up. Because, of course, he's going to play the guy who's going to... as Sean Bean he will either die or turn evil by the end of whatever he's in. All right, now we're all caught up, I think.
That was a long way to go.
It was a long way to go. Backwards.
So does he die in Hudsucker Proxy? Does Steve Buscemi die in Hudsucker Proxy?
I had to look up who he was. He only had a bit part. He was a beatnik bartender.
Okay.
He's just in one of the very last scenes of the movie after every, at the end, right at the end of the second act when everything is as bad as it's going to get. And Tim Robbins is drinking himself into depression at a bar. Because again, it's a comedy and hilarious. Mm-hmm. And Steve Buscemi is the bartender telling him that they don't serve alcohol because it's a juice and coffee bar because they're beatniks. And that's it. That's his whole scene. His part was about the same size as Bruce Campbell in each of the Spider-Man movies.
Right. I'm glad we've got that settled now.
Yeah. No, I had to know.
Yeah, I'm sure. Who else dies a lot in the films they appear in?
I don't know. I have no good answer for that.
Okay. All right. Listeners, write in, please. You there with this playing in your ears. Write in with other actors who die a lot in the films they're in.
Yeah, who is it that when they appear on camera, you know that they are not making it out of the end of that movie alive?
There you go. Do that. Let us know. Because our brains are tired.
They really are. It has been a long week. But before we get off the topic of movies...
Oh, you have more topicking to do at me.
Well,
okay.
I convinced Tiny to sit down and watch a movie the other night that I had fond memories of that was released in 2000.
Uh-huh.
Because I've now got her on board with me where, nothing good has come out in the last decade in movies at all. We've just given up on anything that was done after about 2002.
Sure.
So, have you ever seen the movie Frequency?
I feel like that's a movie where a kid digs out his dad's old radio, his old CB radio or whatever, and lights it up and ends up talking to his dad in the past.
Well, it's not a kid. So it's Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel.
All right.
Dennis Quaid is the dad, Jim Caviezel is the son grown up. 30 years after his father, who was a firefighter in New York, dies, Jim Caviezel, who is a cop in New York, ends up accidentally communicating to him through the magic of... Well, it's not adequately explained. Through the magic of magic.
Okay.
There are some like noises that sound like scientific explanations on the TV. Like on the background, they have like interviews going with scientists who are talking about, wow, the northern lights have been really acting up, and time is 4-dimensional in string theory and stuff. So
okay.
just like in case you care what's happening, it's probably something to do with that stuff.
Okay, so he ends up talking to his dad for reasons.
Well, yeah, exactly. And at first, like, the movie is fantastic because at first it's he's trying to save his father to keep him from dying.
Okay.
And then it transitions about halfway through because there's this old serial killer case that went cold back when, his father was, back 30 years ago in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
And he and his father end up working together through time to solve it. And of course, it touches them in personal ways. Like this is one of those movies that I'm actually giving a recommendation for absolutely anyone. It's a fantastic movie, and the ending is one that it's one of those endings that made me cheer in the movie theater when I saw it.
Oh, it made you cheer because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what's the natural conclusion? The natural conclusion is this whole investigation is the reason this kid's dad died in the first place.
Nope. Okay.
There you go. They pulled a surprise.
Yeah, no, they actually, it's what does finally happen in the movie. Like, it's not like, oh my God, everything is a surprise, but it's not as formulaic as it could be. And most of the movie is actually about the father and the son relationship, and how you basically see how Jim Caviezel growing up without his father, in an otherwise, he started out in a happy family and growing up without a father, and his life is now just a mess.
Okay.
Without that role model. Because his father, you see his father, and his father was a good father and, heroic and brave. And you can see Jim Caviezel is trying to live up to all of that, but he's also adrift and depressed. And he can't keep a relationship together and whatever. So it's a good relationship drama about a father and a son relationship. It's a good time travel movie, and it is all, except there's no actual time travel in it, except like notebook rules where they can, they can leave something in the past and then he can go get it from the safe place in the present. And it's a good serial killer investigation movie with a fantastic ending. And it's been completely forgotten.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's been as forgotten as you think it has.
Really?
Yes, because I have, and of course, the listener will correct me if I am wrong. Okay. But I have a feeling that pretty much this exact same concept has been used at least a couple of times in the intervening years, and very recently in a TV series, I want to say.
Okay.
But since I don't watch TV and I rarely go to the movies, I can't really point you at the right thing.
No, that's fine. And I wouldn't be surprised if the concept has, the idea of communicating through time and solving a mystery that's 30 years old, all of those elements. Just the way this movie put them together was very well done. And of course, Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel was not fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But Dennis Quaid, he's a fantastic actor. The only problem was the two of them were really affecting like a New York Brooklyn accent a little bit much for my ears. Like, you're playing that a little heavy.
Okay. Go see it.
And Michael Cera was in it when he was 10 years old.
I was watching a thing today on the internets. Okay. Do you know who Ashens is?
The name sounds familiar.
Stuart Ashens is his name. Does reviews of cheap 80s toys. And
I think I may have watched.
And various bits of tat. He's basically in front of his couch the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, the brown couch. Anyway. And today he released a video discussing Last Action Hero toys.
No kidding. There were toys for that?
There were toys for that. And here's where I'm going with it, sir.
Okay.
I don't think The Last Action Hero was that bad.
Sir?
Yes?
I also don't think The Last Action Hero was that bad.
Excellent. I am glad we are in agreement on that.
Right? For what it was basically, like poking fun at the tropes.
Mm-hmm.
But not like, I think the biggest problem with the movie was a tonal problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were times like it was poking fun at the tropes, but then when Arnold Schwarzenegger comes out of the movie,
yes,
and he suddenly feels like he has been tormented by the writers for the amusement of a universe that he didn't even know existed. And he feels basically betrayed and cheated of life. I think that it felt like the movie went from first to third without hitting the clutch. You know what I mean? Emotionally.
Right.
Like either of those two ideas would have been good, but next to each other, it was a hard transition. Though I do have to give them credit because when they're in the movie world, that's when it's campy and silly and funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're in the real world, that's where like the real heavy emotions hit it. And the kid, even when he comes out of the movie back into the real world, and he's slammed again with what his real life is like that he's been escaping into movies for. So, actually now I take that back. Maybe it isn't tonally that bad.
Yeah, I've always liked The Last Action Hero. I don't understand really why everybody hated it so much. Because it's got that thing where a character or an individual discovers that, on the other side of whatever it is he's doing, there's a whole nother world going on. It's not just the fiction.
Right.
It's got like the never ending story, although I'm not by any means saying that, they're comparable in that way. But
I honestly would say that like Last Action Hero could be considered an adult never-ending story.
It could be, I suppose.
It touches on some of the same themes. Not all, but some.
Right.
Yeah,
but it's, there's a number of movies that come out like that every so often where, what is it, Page Master, the Macaulay Culkin thing, which was terrible.
That was terrible. And that had such promise, too.
Yeah.
Wow, a kid going in and out of all the different animated books, and they're all different animated cartoon stories. I would love to see that. Oh, never mind.
Uh-huh. It's weird. I feel like and I'm trying to look it up at the same time, but I feel like there was a competing movie that came out at the same time that is really what kind of messed things up.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Here we go. It's the Jurassic Park.
It was the weekend after Jurassic Park.
Yeah, weekend after Jurassic Park and The Fugitive and Robin Hood Men in Tights and Sleepless in Seattle. Well, not the weekend after all that, but those all came out in that same month.
See, my guess would be that Jurassic Park is what did it in, because after Jurassic Park had that opening, because there's people who rush out to see this stuff on opening weekend, and then there's people who go out the next weekend based on word of mouth.
Yeah.
So, and because it was released the weekend after Jurassic Park,
yeah,
I bet that killed it.
Yeah, you can't if you're looking at if you're looking
and
at
also let's also remember the Super Mario Brothers movie was probably still in theaters because that came out right at the end of May, and that probably did a lot of damage to Last Action Hero.
Right. But we also have to remember that Surf Ninjas came out at the same time.
Oh man, that movie. Poor Last Action Hero just didn't have a chance.
Not even a chance. But I'm looking.
Hocus Pocus came out in July.
Yep, and he had the Jackie Chan crime story movie. So
I used to love those Jackie Chan movies.
I did too. Rumble in the Bronx was the first one that really hit it big over here, and then I went and researched all the rest of his films. I
liked Who Am I? Mm-hmm. I think he was a spy with amnesia.
Yes.
That was fantastic.
Yep. The point I'm going to make is in the realm of action movies and summer blockbusters.
Mm-hmm.
Last Action Hero up against both Jurassic Park and The Fugitive.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't stand a chance.
No, not in the least.
And I think just by comparison alone, like if you went to see Jurassic Park or The Fugitive and then went to watch The Last Action Hero, you would find it underwhelming.
Well, I think the other thing, too, is that you go to see Last Action Hero and you're expecting a Schwarzenegger action movie.
Mm-hmm. Especially
if it's released in the summertime.
Sure.
And that was a comedy movie. It was an action movie. You can call it action.
Right.
But it's certainly, if you were going to see like a Terminator or a Predator or something like that, you were going to walk out of there disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
And I don't remember, how much do you remember what the marketing gave away?
I don't.
Did you know what you were walking into?
I don't remember exactly. I feel like it couldn't possibly have been the whole thing because then there wouldn't have been a point.
Right. But though nowadays they don't really care.
No,
they give you the whole plot of the movie. You know?
Yeah. What was the kid's name in that?
Oh, he was Danny Madigan.
Yeah, okay.
Austin O'Brien.
Oh, yeah. There he is, Austin O'Brien. The reason I'm noticing that, sir. So you had Last Action Hero came out in June, right?
Mm-hmm.
In September, a film called Prehysteria came out, which also starred the same kid.
I have such a vague memory of that. I have to look at the logo for that movie now.
Yeah.
Because Prehysteria. Yeah, why do I... Oh, my God.
It's full of other big names.
It was the kid and, like, tiny dinosaurs, right? That was the movie.
Yeah.
And there were tiny dinosaurs.
That's right. That was the whole premise. Anyway, so there, we went afield again.
Welcome back to Digressions and Feature Films.
Other films featuring tiny dinosaurs.
Other films featuring tiny dinosaurs?
Yes, Baby.
Okay.
Do you remember Baby? Is it? I think it's Baby.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Maybe I've got the wrong title. I know I haven't got the wrong actor. Because there's no way I could get that actor wrong. Let's see. This would have been 1908. No, 19. Just feels that way.
Meanwhile, I'm looking at the movies that came out in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, what a mixed bag that year was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here we go.
Because you had Jurassic Park, you had The Fugitive, you had Groundhog Day, and then you also had the Super Mario Brothers movie, the Tom and Jerry movie, Meteor Man. Oh, Needful Things. That was a good movie.
Okay, 1985, Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend.
Nope.
No?
Means nothing to me.
It's got William Catt in it, the greatest American hero.
Real? Oh my God.
It also has Patrick.
My mother used to watch that show. I just remember the theme song. Right? That was Believe It or Not, I'm Walking on
That would be the one.
Right?
Yes. Yes. Very good.
Yeah, okay.
It also has Patrick McGoohan in it. You know, The Prisoner.
Never watched The Prisoner.
Oh,
I know.
You think Lost is a thing.
I know. The Prisoner was Terry Gilliam, wasn't it?
What?
Was The Prisoner Terry Gilliam?
You shut up. It was not.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No.
Wow.
The Prisoner came out. Oh my God. Here we go. We're off and running, folks. We are off and running.
Come back next week. We'll talk about gaming. We promise.
The Prisoner was 1967 to 1968.
Right. Okay.
All right. And
I think I don't know.
If you've never seen The Prisoner and you're a fan of shows like Lost and, you know, all those ones that present you with a quote unquote puzzle that you try to figure out episode after episode based on the scant clues they deign to throw you, which always turn out to be wrong. They always turn out to be wrong, but whatever. If you're a fan of those kind of shows,
because they don't know the answer.
I know.
Sorry.
I don't know. If you like those kind of shows, then go watch The Prisoner. Find it somewhere out there. It's got to be on Netflix or Amazon or something at this point. And it's only one season, but you'll have fun with it, trying to figure out what's going on.
And meanwhile, in my own defense, I just have to establish something here.
Yes.
The reason I said Terry Gilliam is because this is another one of those weird crossed wires in my head.
Yes.
Where when people mention The Prisoner, The Prisoner, I think of Brazil.
Ah, yes.
You know, the yeah.
Yes, Brazil. Look at all
I don't know why those two just get crossed in my head.
Look at all the things that are going to be in the show notes for people to click on and discover. What is wrong with us?
Man, thank God I don't have to put those things together.
Yeah. Find that other sucker.
But now, okay, I had to expand on the show notes now, just for you.
Yes.
Since we are talking about all this movie stuff, have you ever watched the YouTube channel of George Rockall-Schmidt?
Oh, yes. Boy, is he good.
Oh, he is fantastic.
Boy, is he good.
I've been binging 2 YouTube channels this week, and his is one of them.
Yeah.
I had watched him for a while and then sort of fell off and then came back.
I'm not big into his podcast, but
no, neither am I.
The shorter form stuff is excellent.
His evolution, like he did a couple of series of the evolution of different movies, and his evolution of the Alien franchise, was really fantastic.
Yeah, he's got good stuff. Good. I don't know that he's really a film reviewer. He's more of a critiquer.
I would say he goes because he's very much like, first of all, he's very knowledgeable about cinematography. He's very knowledgeable about film history and about the industry of film.
Right.
And he seems genuinely interested in that. He's also very into the analysis, deep form analysis of story themes, and so he's not a reviewer, he's not a critic, he's more closer to an academic. Yeah, I would almost call him a film historian. Yeah, I think that would be the best name for what he does.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, George Rockall-Schmidt. Going in the show notes, folks. We have those for a reason. Feel free to do whatever you do when you want to know more things about what we talk about. Hopefully, the easiest way is to just hit the show notes and you will find a multitude of references to these things. I made some t-shirts.
I heard that. I was sort of on a hiatus when you were doing that, what with the computer breakdown and knee injury and some other stuff.
Yep.
And then I came back from that weekend and all of a sudden you're tweeting about t-shirts.
Yeah. I made some t-shirts on TeePublic. For those of you who are diehard fans already and really We're only 20 episodes in. You can't be that diehard yet, can you?
Honestly, if they've listened this long, they would have to be pretty diehard.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe. If you're a diehard fan of the show, I have put up some t-shirts on TeePublic. There will be a link in the show notes, and a link is available on the right-hand column of our webpage at digressionsandragons.com if you would like to check those out. I'm just getting started. There's, some preliminary ones. There's like 3 to check out. Decide what you want.
If you buy one of our t-shirts, but make sure you let them know we sent you.
Yeah.
Right? That's
not how that works.
Damn it.
What I will tell you is that a small percentage of the cost of those shirts goes back to us to help support the show. Because I know people are looking for different ways to support the show. We've taken the decision, at least at this stage, for the foreseeable future, not to run it on Patreon, not to try to kickstart it or to GoFundMe or whatever. If we get up to like, 500,000 listeners a week, then we'll consider, funding. I've got 3 of them up there. There's a very simple logo. There's the usual logo with the dragon thing. And then I put up a Do Not Abandon Your Cars graphic t-shirt thingy, which I have to tell you makes a lovely, lovely pillow, because you can get, not just t-shirts, but all kinds of other stuff over there on TeePublic. But I always make it a practice to order at least one copy of the design that I've put up there for something for me, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I'm going to get a pillow because, I like to sit up in bed when I'm reading and whatnot. So I went with the pillow thing.
Wait, you can get these things on other things?
Yes.
These things on other things? That's
yes.
Free radio, too.
Yeah, do you want to...
You can get things and stuff?
You can
Excellent.
Get things and stuff, yeah. I can give you a partial list of the things and stuff you can get. Tank tops, long sleeve t-shirts, crew necks, hoodies, kids t-shirts, kids hoodies, kids long sleeve t-shirts, onesies, phone cases, laptop cases, stickers, which I think are particularly nice for some of these designs, wall art, notebooks, a mug, a travel mug, pillows in I think 3 or 4 different sizes, a tote, and... if you're really into things, a large tapestry you can hang in a prominent place in your house.
I just saw that. And now it makes me want a tapestry for every project I've ever worked on.
Those are
like my war banners.
I know, it's great. But no, seriously, if you're interested in having our logo or something clever from us on a t-shirt, please, by all means, head over to TeePublic, check things out and see what you might like. There's a variety of colors and styles and all kinds of stuff. And we get a little bit of the cost of your cost. We get a little bit of that to kind of help keep things going smooth over here, which is great. Also, I would like to ask folks to either jump in the comments on this show or send me an email at digressionsandragons.com and suggest what you might like to see on a t-shirt.
Preferably something related to this show.
Yeah, that would be great. Something related to this show. Something from this show on a t-shirt.
I'd really like an Incredible Hulk t-shirt.
That would be great.
He's punching out Donald Trump. Yeah, I bet you would.
Keep in mind, I don't art. Okay? I don't art. So, something you've heard us say on the show or something that has particularly been funny to you on the show or whatever. And we will see about t-shirting that in an interesting way for you all folks over there.
Regular Guy Tyler?
Yeah, regular Guy Tyler.
He's not an ambassador?
He is not.
Oh, I see.
As he will explain.
Who left a comment on episode 18, which was accurate at the time. Mm-hmm. And he explained to us, helpfully, that ambassador is typically the highest diplomatic rank, so leave that to the citizens who got in early, which is my assertion. Mm-hmm. And then make people who write in ministers and councilors based on arbitrary discrimination. Ministers of particular note can be promoted to charge d'affaires, which is kind of like a vice ambassador. Did you make me read that just because it had the French in there?
Sure. Why not?
No, I actually am fully on board with that. I have maintained from the beginning that ambassador should have been a title that was exclusively for those who got in as early adopters.
Right. You do realize that is only like 3 people.
Yeah, well, those 3 people.
Okay. All right. Okay. So how do you want to approach this then? What do you want to call everybody else? You want to go over the ministers and counselors?
I guess, like, if we do need a name for our nation, but I have always liked, like, the lowest, because the British royalty, each year they give out various honors to, like, they knight people, but they also have all sorts of other honors that they award that are lower than knighthood or whatever.
Right.
And the lowest rank of honor that they give out is something that I have always loved. What?
Is it Groom of the Stool?
No, it's even lower than that.
Oh, wow.
It's MBE. Member of the British Empire.
Oh, you live here. Great. Okay.
Right? So, like, what we need... So, you could be, just by giving us feedback, a member of the Digressian... I don't know.
We'll get to that.
Oh, do we have that? Okay.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, so members of the Digressial Empire, or whatever it turns out to be. And then we can award ambassadorships, knighthoods, lordhoods, counselors, ministers, charged affairs.
Okay, well...
we'll need a Chancellor of the Exchequer.
You understand? No, we don't. You understand this is going to complicate things, because for 20 episodes, we've had all kinds of ambassadors anytime they write in, and we use it.
Yeah, and for 20 episodes, I've been telling you we shouldn't be doing that.
All right. Okay, fine. Now, here's the thing.
I have never felt as strongly about something in my life as I feel about this.
All right, whatever. I'm giving in. You folks need to sort yourselves then into either ministers or counselors. Is that what it is?
Yeah, okay.
Is that satisfactory to you, oh Lord Mayor? What is...
Can I be Lord Protector of the Realm?
Oh, I suppose.
Oh, that's awesome.
What does that make me? Anyway, so ministers and counselors, is that okay for you?
Yeah, ministers and counselors is fine.
Okay, here's what I propose.
Okay.
All right. You are a minister if you wrote in with a question that we answered. You are a counselor if you provided us new information.
That is a brilliant distinction, sir.
Okay?
I see what you did there.
All right. If you did both of those things, take your pick.
Or you can be a charged affair.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. No, that makes sense. If you provided a question and new information, then yes, you can be a charge d'affaires. There you go.
Excellent. Now that we've got that all sorted out, we will have forgotten it by next week.
Sure. I will have to figure out who the 3 people who got in before the site went live, before it officially went live. Well, I know one of them's Leslie. So she can stay an ambassador.
I know one of them is Arthur.
Oh, Arthur is an ambassador.
Arthur is an ambassador.
Okay. All right. Good. That's Arthur HS, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Good. I just need to figure out who the 3rd one is. Okay, so those are our 2 official ambassadors. There's a 3rd, at this point, shadow ambassador that I don't know about yet, because I don't know who it is for sure.
Our ambassador, like Andorra or something.
Yes. All right. And then the rest of you will just kind of have to sort yourselves into ministers and counselors based on whether you asked a question or provided new information. And if you did both, then you are a charge d'affaires.
And if you don't specify, you are simply a member of our empire.
Right. There you go. I'm glad that's settled finally.
Yeah. And I'm just going to address the next one quickly because I see it on the list.
Yes.
Thank you, anonymous person Dan, and absolutely everybody else. Because I have been hearing page 38 for, 2 weeks now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. It was page 238. on which the starting equipment at higher, or the wealth at higher levels table was. And let me tell you, having looked at that table, it is not nearly as useful as I remembered it in my head. So thanks for that. I am already done with needing it.
Yeah, okay.
Please stop.
There's
and especially please stop just sending me on Twitter just the tweet, page 238 or page 38. It doesn't tell me anything.
What are you tweeting a page number out of what book?
I need context.
Help me.
I can't even keep track of conversations I'm actually in, let alone ones I was in 2 weeks ago.
Right. Now, we come to, I have to say, the next very difficult piece of business. You remember a few episodes ago, we were trying to figure out, since we have ambassadors, what they are ambassadors of.
Weren't we actually trying to figure that out like a minute ago?
No. This is more complicated.
Okay.
One presumes they are an ambassador of a place.
Right.
The problem is, we don't know what the name of that place is. Yes, we know they're ambassadors of the Digressions and Dragons podcast, but that's not a place. That is a thing. An ephemeral thing made up of zeros and ones, to be exact.
Right.
So what we need is something more concrete than that, like a real imaginary place people can be from.
And I'm assuming Digressy McDigressface is already taken?
That is not only already taken, it has been thrown out.
Damn. Something's going to be named something McSomething face.
We had a number of suggestions that came in.
Okay.
And I'm just going to go through them real quickly for you. Real quickly. Just, in brief, basically, without too much discussion. Sure. Just to see if anything strikes a chord with you.
So what you're telling me is to just shut up and listen.
Pretty much.
Okay.
We had suggestions of Digreece. Digressland, Digresstopia, Digresistan,
like that.
Digressonia, and Digresselot.
Oh man, that last one. Because we do.
Yeah. That's why I put it last, because I wanted you to give a fair shot to all the others before we got to the one that actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, no, that one actually is. But of course that means that now if we're awarding titles to those who give feedback and don't claim a better title, they would be like members of the Digresselot Empire, which would be the adjective form of Digresselot.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad.
No, Digresselot Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it does have the word lotion in it, but
right?
Whatever.
Goes on smooth.
Okay, my proposal is that we put it to a vote.
Okay, that seems fair.
Okay.
There's only two of us. What if we tie?
No. Not a vote for us.
Oh.
A vote for the listeners.
Oh.
Yes. So here's what you do. When this episode goes up, in amongst your telling us about movies and other things, down in the comments section, and this is the only place we're going to take votes from, is our comment section. Because it's just too chaotic otherwise.
Okay, fair enough.
We have to chase everything around all over the internet, basically.
I was actually going to suggest we do it by mail, so each of our listeners would take, say, a $5 bill and write their vote on it and mail it to the Angry GM.
And that's why you're not allowed to run contests.
I know, you and the Gaming Commission keep saying the same thing.
I know, it's great. Okay, so so what you're going to do is you're going to go down to our comment section on this episode and this episode alone, and you're going to post in the comments with your vote. And you have 6 choices, all right? I will read them again, a little slower this time, so you can ponder each one in the fullness of time. And then you go in there and tell us which one you think is your favorite. We're not going to mess around with all this, what do they call it? The voting where you vote for all your favorites and second favorites and third favorites, and then you count all the votes, and then you refine from that based on who's got seconds and thirds, and then
really?
That thing. We're not going to do that.
Well, first past the post is really the most democratic form of voting.
Yeah, it's absolutely first past the post. It's the only way. It's the only way anything that involves voting works is first past the post. It's clearly the most fair and the most accurate. Now, these choices are, once again, Digreece, Digressland, Digresstopia, Digresistan, Digressonia, and Digresselot. Okay, those are your choices. Vote for one of those. Whichever one is your most favorite, vote for that one in our comment section on the website for this episode. We will count them up. You will have 1 week from the release of this episode. So basically, between the time this episode comes out and the time we... no, that's not right. Because it's 2 weeks and then there's another... So it'll be... But then the recording happens. You might have more than a week. Hang on. So if we record here,
holy,
and it comes out here, and okay, so we give you a week to vote once the episode comes out. Then we can record that one. No, I don't understand. How does this work?
The episodes come out on Thursdays, correct?
Yes, they come out on Thursdays.
So you have from the Thursday that the podcast releases until the following Wednesday afternoon.
Uh-huh.
And the Wednesday following the release of that episode, when we record, we will declare the winner. So from this moment where you are listening to this podcast, you have until next Wednesday at, let us say, 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Is that right?
Cast your votes.
And then you won't find out the winner until 2 weeks after that.
That is true.
Unless you can count yourself in the comments section,
which should be easy enough to do.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, what we could do is establish a rudimentary electoral college.
We could.
We could get some of our charge d'affaires, as electors, and then do it that way. Because again, I think that would be a little because we don't want the tyranny of the majority,
right? So you would elect your elector, who would then go into the final, the decision making and make whatever vote they're going to make.
Well, no, and then the electors' votes would be considered on a first past the post basis,
right?
Right.
Are they required to vote the same way as the people who elected them?
I think we would have to leave it up to state assemblies to each establish their own rules.
Okay.
Look, I've read the Federalist Papers. Okay, this all checks out. Just trust me.
Okay. All right. If you say so.
This is how Hamilton would have done it. Okay.
Oh, all right. No, just vote. You'll have till next Wednesday. And then we'll figure it out from there.
We will be counting the votes next Wednesday. But you will not hear the answer for 2 weeks.
Right.
So you can wait with bated breath for 2 weeks from next Wednesday. 2 weeks and a day, technically.
Uh-huh.
And then you will know the actual name of our empire.
Does anybody still remember what we were voting on at this point? I don't know. Person of interest, Redneck Mandalorian, wrote into the website, episode 18. He says, I was reading through the Angry GM's backlog, and I saw where he said he strongly disliked most of the Marvel Universe with the exception of the X-Men cartoon. As someone who might run a superheroes game in the future, I would be interested in knowing whether his issues with Marvel are based on critical analysis of how to make things better, or if it was just a it's not for me kind of deal.
Okay, that's an easy one. It all comes down to a concept called canon lockout. With any comic book series, especially in the Marvel universe, there is so much backstory that there is no good entry point. The reason I liked the X-Men cartoon is because, and I really didn't watch many of the Marvel movies for a while, so, and that was an older post.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I liked the X-Men cartoon was because it was pretty self-contained. It covered its own backstory and didn't draw on anything else. So you didn't get the sense that you were reading, you were coming into the middle of a story that had been going on for 30 to 60 years. And that's really my only issue. That's why I never got into comic books.
Mm.
Because, I have gotten into a few. I will admit that I started reading some of Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
I started with the Dead Presidents line.
Oh, wow.
Occasionally I get into some Batman stuff. Like, I love the Nightfall thing. I got the 3-part giant omnibus that collected the entire Nightfall saga. And a few other odds and ends here and there. But I never really got into comics just because I like, as you have probably guessed, I like to know everything I can about something. And there's a lot to do if you're going to be a completionist and you're going to get into comics. So that's really my only issue. And I thought that the X-Men cartoon show was actually really good. The whole context for this discussion, if I remember correctly, was I was looking for a way to run the Marvel heroic role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
And since the players at my table all had various comic book interests, I was extremely intimidated at trying to do that. So I had to draw a very firm line as to where the canon was that I could draw from. And so I actually started a prequel to the first episode of the X-Men cartoon, Night of the Sentinels.
Mm-hmm.
Which at that point, the Sentinels were already running around doing things.
Yeah, and here so I'm just making the noises the listeners would make to indicate they're listening.
Oh, okay. I got confused. So I just ran the timeline back a little bit so that I could do a story of how the Sentinels got constructed. I have no knowledge of how that might have been in the real comic book universe. And I told that to the players. I'm like, hey, I'd like to do this. It could be fun, but I'm running back in time a little bit so that we could have an interesting short campaign. Because that's all I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a campaign of the Sentinels becoming a thing and the X-Men dealing with the first Sentinel attacks and the Sentinels going through iterations and recruiting and them also rescuing other mutants and things like that. That was the whole context for that.
I ran into a problem the other day.
Okay.
Or rather, I recalled a problem I had with a particular game we tried playing once. We had one of those guys who was really into trying to figure out the best possible strategic approach to the situation.
Okay.
This scenario where there's no way they could lose even if it goes wrong.
Right. They don't believe in the no-win scenario.
Right.
The no-lose scenario.
Exactly.
Right.
And so we were trying to get him to kind of like hurry up because it was taking a long time between turns and whatnot. And finally, the guy sitting immediately to my left just got up from the table, kind of smacked the table, put his hands down, leaned over, and basically yelled at the guy, "Just roll the damn dice."
Hey, Gamer Concepts has a t-shirt that says that.
There you go. It's amazing. So if you need a shirt like that encourages people to take action rather than engage in analysis paralysis, head over to Gamer Concepts. They have them there. Order some. Tell them we sent you. So I'm told, once again, that you might have, possibly, maybe, accidentally run an actual game.
I did, actually. It's a good thing our recording night changed this week, or else I would have had to give an excuse again. Because it ended up going off not on Tuesday night, but on Thursday night. And now Thursdays will be our game night for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
So yes, last night was the first night of my new personal, for fun, though still online, campaign, D&D campaign, of swashbuckling adventure and exploration on the not really the high seas, it's an archipelago.
Mm.
They're not, they're never that far from land.
The low seas.
Yeah, the low seas.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's that.
All this suspense, and that's all you give me.
This is the thing. I mean, enough if I say it was a first session.
Right.
So there's a lot of just, like, when I run a first session, one of the things I try to do is I try to get out of the way of the players if they want to interact with each other a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I figure there's plenty of time in the game for me to throw stuff at them. So I tend to just, dial things back a little bit and give them the opportunities to interact depending on the level of interaction they want, with the understanding that the players are also a little bit uncomfortable because they're just starting off the campaign too, and so they might not bite on things. And so, with that in mind, I'm always ready to move things along. So I actually tend to start all of my campaigns in a tavern.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that is a good scene for people to interact.
Sure.
And, I throw a few interesting things around the tavern so that if they just want to poke at the world a little bit, then they can have a little bit of light interaction. Sort of just like movies and books, they always start with like everything's perfectly normal and then.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my little bit of everything's perfectly normal time. It gives everybody a chance to kind of try on their character and talk to each other, and then I gradually move things along. And in this case, I feel a little bad because the first session was rather railroady. Because the characters were basically taking the adventure starts off with four heroes who have never met each other but who happen to be born in the same small town, returning to the town after years of training to be adventurers.
Right.
And they are on a ferry that will carry them between two towns that will get them back to where they're going. And then the ferry is caught in a storm and basically, it's a shipwreck.
Right.
I stranded them on an unknown shore. Okay. Particularly because my campaign sort of has become focused on exploration mm-hmm. and wilderness survival,
mm-hmm.
and also on delving into an ancient mystery.
All right.
So by stranding them in the wilderness, not too far, and I don't want to say too much because they're currently stranded in the wilderness and don't actually know where they are.
Sure.
But they think they do right now.
Right. Will they in 2 weeks?
Will they know where they are?
Yeah.
Oh, good point. Yeah. God, I hope they figured it out in 2 weeks. Or they're dead and the campaign's over. They didn't make it. They didn't figure out the whole starvation thing.
Uh-huh.
No, so they're, I stranded them on a distant shore, and there are basically basically here, and they're stuck with like 2 or 3 NPCs who survived the shipwreck with them, who can basically act as prompts and guidance in the event that they're needed. Like, oh, we're going to need shelter, food, and water. In case you've never been in a game where these are actually issues. Here's how, we're shipwrecked. Here's how we should proceed. Let's secure shelter first, find some food and water. And then I happen to have this semi-accurate map of the region that if you guys go explore, you will eventually be able to match us up with somewhere on the map, hopefully. So it kind of lightly eases them into exploration, but with a purpose. Because one of the things with exploration campaigns is that they tend to be a lot of just fill in the map.
Mm-hmm.
And filling in the map without a goal gets boring. It's like, this is a map of the world, and I've hidden all these fun things around. Go find them. So in this case, they have some immediate concerns, which are accounting for day-to-day survival. And then they have exploring, but with a purpose, which is, exploring enough to notice landmarks. And as they start to get a theory as to where they are, they can then test that theory by going out into the wilderness and seeing different landmarks. And, oh, this is here. Yeah, we actually know where we are. And then from there, they can actually set a goal as to how to get back to civilization. And I like to start my first adventure with whatever I think the biggest themes of the campaign are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Which in this case, it is an ancient mystery because, of course, while they're on this distant shore, they're going to stumble on the first clues about the ancient mystery, So,
sure.
So it went well, but, a lot of it was just spent on the ship is caught in a storm. And they actually were pretty smart. They were actually trying to help the sailors and keep control of the ship. And 2 of them are sailors. So, I actually got to run a fun scene where they were, stuck in a storm that basically came out of nowhere. Because it was a magic storm.
Imagine that.
One of them is a cleric of a storm god.
Oh.
So he's kind of taking the whole thing a little bit personally right now. Yeah, and one of the sailors basically blamed him for it. Like, we shouldn't have let you on board. Because we knew you were going to bring this on us. Because there's 2 gods of the sea in my world. The nice one, and then the one that gets drunk and causes storms and craziness. So, and sailors, basically, they like the nice one. And they just try to pray to the other one to leave them alone. So then there was a little bit of a fight. And, I'm getting a sense for which of the characters are more interested in interacting with the world and which ones are more interested in just the pure adventure-y stuff so that I can figure out how to strike a good balance. So it was a lot of feeling out and a lot of, taking a loose hand on the reins. And then when things sort of peter out, moving the plot along to the next thing. And so not a lot happened in the first adventure. It was basically, they got on the ship, they met a few of the NPC characters, then the ship crashes, they found a cave, and of course the cave was occupied, so they evicted the previous occupants, which were not velociraptors.
Oh.
and then that was it. And at this point now, they have spent their first night in that cave, and next time they'll be ready to explore the land. But it went really well. Everybody had a good time. I had a good time. It's really a lot of fun to just run a game that just for fun. You know what I mean?
Groovy, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you a question about your game and its,
sure,
and its first session.
Okay.
Did you learn anything from your first session that you hadn't considered before?
Jesus, that's... Wow. I don't want to sound like a jerk.
Uh-huh.
Not really.
Okay.
Actually, one of the things that surprised me is because I have played with the players before, and some of them have been in groups together with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Though, for a number of reasons, I'm not mentioning who's involved.
Right.
It's a personal group. But, and I expected them to be more into interacting with each other and the world and talking about their backstories and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I chalked that up to new campaign jitters.
Right.
So I ended up just kind of pushing things along. And the other thing, just to admit outright, is that I was nervous. You're always nervous starting a new campaign.
Sure.
And there is nothing harder than that first sentence. It's like, where do I start? Now I have to set up the entire game in one sentence. What's the first sentence that comes out of my mouth? And after years and years and years of doing this, you'd think I would actually sit down and write down a first sentence. And yet I never do. I always figure, I'll figure out the beginning. I know the middle and the end. And I know where we have to start, basically. So I'm sure I'll just be able to start talking. No, not the first session. And I'm always nervous starting a new game. 30 years of doing this, I'm always nervous.
That's normal.
Yeah.
That's the ground state for any new campaign.
It is. And honestly, even in an established campaign, when you have that big session, the one that you've been like, this one's going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the climax, or this is where the dragon's going to be, or whatever. You go into that really nervous too. So, hey, anybody out there who wonders when you stop being nervous as a GM, never.
Yeah, never.
It always keeps coming back.
You just learn to deal with it. That's the only difference.
Yep, exactly.
This is going to sound weird. This is going to sound like a weird question. When you get a new group together, or you're starting a new campaign or a new adventure, or whatever it is you're doing,
mm-hmm.
Does your game start in the first session? or does it start before that?
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean.
Okay. So here's the thing. In my head, I tend to think of the moment when I start giving the players information they need to begin deciding A, if they want to be in the game, and B, if they, what kind of characters they want to create and that kind of stuff. In my head, I tend to think that that is when the game starts.
Okay.
Right? Because in that process, you're doing things like you're setting up your world. You're telling them a little bit about the world and the people in it and what's going on and that kind of stuff,
Or you hand them a 60-page document.
Or you hand them a 60-page document. Yes, indeed.
Don't do that, by the way. That's bad.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do that. 60 pages is too much.
I'm not going to read that.
Yeah, well.
I will skim it, but I will not read it.
The players were on board with it, and most of it didn't have to be read.
Right.
So it was...
But that's kind of what I'm talking about, though. Okay, you handed over this 60-page document with all this stuff about the rules and the way you want the game to work and the world the game is set in and how it works and blah, 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 all that stuff. That, to me, is where the game starts.
Okay.
So now I go back to my question. Do you start the game in the first session, or does it start before that?
Okay, then if going by your definition, my game started well before the first session.
Okay.
Okay. In my mind, the first session is when whatever meetings and whatever else happens, none of that is the first session until everybody shows up with a character and they start acting in character and making decisions and rolling dice. Okay, nothing before that counts as the game. Mm-hmm. So when I say first session, characters have been made, background, and generally I don't give a whole lot of background. To be fair, I said that 60-page document, but to be fair, first of all, it was actually more like 40. And second of all, more than half of it was because I decided to rewrite all of the equipment tables, and because I decided to create my own custom backgrounds rather than using the ones from the player's handbook.
Right.
So that's what ate up most of the page space. Otherwise, the actual backstory stuff was about, if it was 10 pages, it was a lot. And that was basically just a 1 to 2 page backstory of the campaign and the country. And then just a little gazetteer. Like, here's like the interesting locations you might have heard of that you could just look at and see, It's basically, most of it is not meant to be read all the way through before you start playing. But my players did read it all. But that said, then I give it to them, and then they make characters on their own. I don't want to be involved in character generation anymore until you finish your character.
Right.
Unless I'm playing with complete newbies. I don't want to have a sit-down character generation session. I want to say, here's the information. You know the rules. If you have any questions, ask me. Let me know when you're done with your character, and then you and I will have a private one-on-one discussion about your backstory and anything weird and, and figure out maybe connections to the world, or you have a personal quest or stuff like that. That stuff I'll work out together after you have made a character. So by the time the first time we all really sit down together, we are playing,
Mm-hmm.
So is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. You don't see the all the preliminary stuff as being a place where the story you're going to tell can begin.
Well, obviously, my campaign, like I try to follow the literary rule for my campaigns, is that the actual game starts at the most interesting moment, or the first most interesting moment in the story.
Right.
Okay. So in this case, group of people, they're going back home after years and years and years of being away. They happen to all be in the same place at the same time. Bam, shipwreck, foreign shore, figure it out from there. That's the most interesting first moment in the story. That's where my campaign is going to start. Not counting the little bit of lead up where, okay, you're waiting for the boat and you roll in a tavern and you see each other and describe your characters and you get to meet some of the sailors and stuff.
Sure.
All that other stuff is just backstory. It's just context so that the players, when they're generating a character, they can create a character that is connected to the world if they desire. And if they only desire... I actually, in my backgrounds, developed 2 different types of backgrounds and called them out. There are backgrounds that are extremely well connected to specific organizations and events in the campaign history. And then there are backgrounds that are more like, your family was sailors. So you could decide your level of engagement with all of the background crap in the campaign. If you just want to go out and wander through the wilderness and kill things and take their stuff and solve an ancient mystery and save the world and all of that stuff, you could do that. If you want a deeply connected character to the world with NPCs who and the organization stuff, you could do that too. So I wanted people to have that option. But all that stuff is still just backstory.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's fine. I won't say you're wrong, but okay.
But you'll think it.
I'll think it. Yeah, I'll think it.
Well, let me ask you a question.
All right.
Because really all we're talking about here is we're not talking about differences in the level of work. Right? I mean, notwithstanding 50-page documents.
Right.
Okay. We both accept that before the players can sit down and play their characters in an actual adventure, there is some lead up work that involves establishing backstory and characters and all of that stuff. Right?
Right.
The only difference between what we're saying here is you consider that part of the game.
Right.
Whereas I say that's all prep work. And the game does not start until I say, okay, you're all in a tavern. Go.
Right.
So my question is, what does that distinction get you?
What does that distinction get me? Okay.
Yeah. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. What that distinction gets me is a number of things, I think. All right. And I'm sure you'll straighten me out if I'm wrong on something. But what I feel like it gets me is the ability to begin planting the seeds of the story that they're going to, attempt to participate in. It allows me to set up the world that they're going to be gaming in so that they can then make what they feel are appropriate choices to operate within that world for character creation.
Right.
And backgrounds that make sense and all that kind of stuff for those things. And I feel like it gives me a better opportunity to get to know how the characters the players are making are going to be interacting with the setting before we hit that first session.
But I do all of that too.
Yeah, I know. But
I just don't call it the game.
Yeah, I think it is part of the game though, because the choices they make there affect what they're going to do in the game. If it's not part of the game, then at least it's the prologue.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with you there.
Right.
Like I said, what we're really disagreeing about is whether we call all of that setup crap, whatever it entails, because I set up the story elements that were going to be important, that I felt were going to be important in the campaign. I provided, various background options. The players then generated their characters, created backstories to the extent that they wanted to, provided them to me. I looked at their backstories and then added story elements based on their backstories that would connect them more deeply to the campaign and propose them and say, hey, what about this? Could this be part of your backstory? And they said yes or no, and we tweaked that. So I did all that same stuff. The only difference in what we're saying here is I call that prologue or prep and you call it game. And my question is, what's the value of splitting the hair there? Why,
the value in calling it part of the story versus the value of just calling it prep?
Or calling it backstory or prologue or preliminary work. Yeah.
Because it gets my brain in a place that starts thinking about the story and how I'm going to challenge the characters and adjusting the story that I might have in mind already to take account of what they're doing and whatnot. It's maybe it is just semantic. I don't know, but I feel like it matters whether you consider that to be part of the game or whether you just consider that to be necessary preparations.
Okay.
I think I feel like it's a different mindset.
And I can't argue that, because obviously you have a mindset that works for you, and I have a mindset that works for me, and I have a clear line that says backstory, start of the campaign.
Right.
Whereas you find it is more useful to set your line back so that you're thinking in terms of building the campaign out of everything that happens, not just, okay, this is the first point where you get to make decisions that matter.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that, and it's totally fair. I was only asking purely for curiosity why the distinction was important, because you asked about it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's what I think.
I'm actually what I find more interesting is that we sort of, apart from the way what we call it, we really do have a very similar process for setting up the game.
Oh yeah.
In terms of trying to take into account, establishing a basic framework so that the characters can make, or so that the players can make characters that fit the game appropriately, and then letting the players feed back into that process so that you can then build a more personal campaign from there. Mm-hmm. So that there's a couple of feedback loops before everything gets rolling.
Right.
No, and I think that's really valuable.
Yeah. I think this is only semi-related to what we were just talking about. I think it's important that regardless of what campaign you have planned as a GM, that it be able to be reactive and adjusting to what the characters are doing and what the players are doing and saying,
Well, I think part of it depends on how much of your campaign you have planned. Mm-hmm. I mean, I will say because these players, when we did have a meeting before the game,
right?
for whatever your given definition of that is, which is what I usually refer to as a session 0, where we just sat around and shot the bull and said, okay, what type of game do we all want to run?
Right.
I didn't even start thinking about the campaign until we sat down and talked about it, and I picked out some of the elements that they highlighted, and in my talking, they got excited about certain ideas, and those are what built into the initial pitch for the campaign. Mm-hmm. And so among them they really got into the idea of solving a mystery. They wanted a campaign-spanning mystery, some, whatever. So that kind of puts an onus on me to at least have one question that I have an answer for that is enough to build a campaign around. Otherwise it's not a mystery.
Right.
But beyond that, I only have especially with this first adventure, I'm not ruining the ending because they really should be done with it by now. They're going to have 2 or 3 different potential directions to go that I have planted in this first adventure, because I want to see which one they as a group are interested in pursuing, so that I get a sense of what kind of stories they want. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Do they want to continue to explore? Do they want to go home and interact with their families and friends? Or do they want to go chasing after this other mystery? Those are basically the framework of the 3 choices. So, but I don't plan more than an adventure in advance other than some big story beats. Like at this point, I know how the campaign has to end.
Right.
It has to end with the mystery is solved and then the thing is dealt with. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, whatever's going to fill in the middle, it can go in pretty much any direction.
Yeah. I tend to think of it in terms of signposts. Mm-hmm. Whenever I start a campaign, I know pretty much what the start is.
Right.
And I know pretty much what the end is. Mm-hmm. Okay. And all the bits in between are pretty flexible.
Right. You may have some vague ideas about some of the different roads that might get you from the beginning to the end.
Right.
But you can also adapt on the fly.
Yeah. That means I don't get locked. Essentially, the players can never go the wrong direction.
Right.
They can go wherever they want, but it's never the wrong direction.
See, at first, I'll say in the beginning of my campaigns, I follow that rule where the players can't go in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. So that that's not entirely true. I mean, this is about, an archipelago where they grew up in this little tiny kingdom, and this is where they wanted to adventure, and I built this archipelago in detail. If they sail away and go looking for some foreign continent, I'm going to be a little bit pissed off.
Right.
That's a wrong direction as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but
they know
by the same
that's part
token,
of the premise of the game.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You've already discussed that ahead of time, so you know theoretically what they want and how you should prepare for that.
But as time goes on and they start making choices about which directions to head in and which ways to pursue these investigations and other side plots or pieces of the main plot, which things are important, I tend to follow a pyramid structure so that over time the decisions and the choices contract, so that in the end they get to an ending that is appropriate for the beginning of the campaign.
Okay.
So over time, the number of right choice or the number of wrong choices expands from almost none to some number, and the number of correct choices decreases from pretty much anywhere to, if you've been paying attention to what's been going on, you'll know that this is the next place you really need to go. And if you don't go there, then this city is going to be wiped out by the Tarask because it's waking up. Mm-hmm. And you knew that was happening, so, But I will also say, if they wanted a more open-ended campaign, if they just wanted Skyrim, mm-hmm. if they just wanted to explore a world, then yeah, there would be no wrong directions. But they wanted a mystery, they wanted an epic quest.
Yeah.
So, I've got to give those things, and a mystery has an answer and an epic quest has an ending. So my campaigns have to have those. And if they're going to work, then I've got to have the answer to the mystery so that I can start setting it up in the friggin' backstory.
Yeah.
So that they get 6 months from now, they can, oh man, that is why that family has that crest.
Now, if you're one of Angry's players and things haven't paced out right, you're not allowed to listen to what he just said.
No, I will not let the first adventure drag out that long. The first adventure is too dull to drag out that long because it really does come down to just wandering the wilderness a little bit. just kind of get your feet wet in exploration to figure out where you are.
Right.
So, yeah. At that point, I'll just kill him. A hippogriff will come out of the sky and just kill him. You took too long. You wandered in the wrong direction. MMO rules. You weren't supposed to go to this. Please stick to the starting area.
Yes. Glass wall, sorry. The sea is full of piranhas. What?
I've been playing Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, mm-hmm. and I thought it was one of those, because it's a big open world sailing game. You can sail around the open world, except it's not that big.
Right.
And I thought the map was wraparound.
Oh.
Where you go off the southern half of the map and you end up back on the northern half of the map.
Right, because that's the way globes work.
Right. Assuming they're donuts. But... So, and I'm doing, there's like there's one quest in the game that is timed, mm-hmm. where you have to pick up something from one island, and then you have exactly 20 minutes before it spoils to visit 8 different other islands. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I looked at the map and I plotted out my route, and I'm like, okay, this is the most efficient route. And at one point, I'm like, I'll just sail off the southern edge of the map, come back on the north, and then I'll hit the last island. I did that, and all of a sudden, your expositional NPC says, whoa, it's too dangerous to go in that direction. You're going to have to turn around. I'm like, damn it, there's walls.
Wow.
And then the stuff spoiled.
Oh.
Then I had to reload the save.
Oh.
I mean, you could try it again. You just go back and be like, I screwed up. Can I have more? But no, I just reloaded the save because I didn't have the heart to do it again.
Wind Waker's pretty good.
I like it. I was trying to figure out why I like it, honestly. It's very different from the other games in the Legend of Zelda series. But it's sort of... Basically, it is an archipelago. It's a game about exploring an archipelago of islands and solving ancient mystery.
Now we see.
Yeah. Yeah, it was also... When I was playing Skyrim, my new campaign involved a group of people going to this northern Germanic... based on Germanic and Russian laws and stuff, town, and basically, taking over or reestablishing the nobility that had ruled it in ancient times and discovering there were all these cultural differences. Yeah, so... The poor players, when I was stuck in Dark Souls, they had it rough. But yeah, no, the thing about Wind Waker is it's a very divisive game, both for the art style, which is much more cartoony than the other Zelda games, or at least the other 3D Zelda games, and also because it can get tedious. Because you are sailing around, and I'm not playing the remake, by the way, I'm playing the original.
Oh.
So you're sailing around, you have this world, and basically the world map is divided into a 7x7 grid, where in each grid there is an island. So there are 49 islands to explore. You sail between them in this little skiff. There's a little bit more distance between the islands than there really needs to be, but that had to do with loading times.
Right.
And in order to sail, you have a magical device that allows you to change the direction of the wind. You can also steer, so you don't always have to have the wind exactly at your back, but you'll go fastest when you're, running with the wind. But, like the device that lets you change the wind, there's this protracted animation every time you use it. And so there's like the little speed bumps that just like slow it down. And there are one too many quests that involve sailing to like 8 different locations and getting things and delivering them to 8 other different locations in order to move forward. So I totally understand why it's one of the more divisive games, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it for anybody who's coming into Zelda for the first time.
Oh, that's great.
But I really love it.
Because I was looking at Zelda games, what with Breath of the Wild being out and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Which I think I would really like to try Breath of the Wild, but what do I know? I could be totally wrong.
I also would very much like to try Breath of the Wild.
But I was looking at the older Zelda games to try to figure out what the lineage of Breath of the Wild was and that kind of stuff. And
Good luck.
Yeah, I know. I figured that out eventually.
It comes down to Breath of the Wild is, and I have not played it, so I'm only going based on what I know of the game.
Right. But
it is most appropriately a throwback to the very first Legend of Zelda game on the NES. Mm. Okay, because that one was very open-ended. It was... I mean, the basic premise of all the Zelda games is pretty much the same. You have to gather some number of something from a number of dungeons that are scattered around the world. And there's, fighting and puzzle solving and all the things that you would expect to do in the various dungeons. And when you find those items, they open up, other locations in the world. And of course, there's stuff to find in the world also. Like there's all sorts of little sub-items and sub-quests and all sorts of little stuff. But, not like to the extent of Skyrim where it's all just side quests. Mm-hmm. There is a very focused plot to it. As time went on, what happened with the Zelda games is that they became more linear. So that the items that you would pick up in certain dungeons would be necessary for you to explore the sections of the overworld that brought you to the next dungeon.
Right.
And so the game would, as you explored a dungeon, you would open up more of the world. And as you open up more of the world, you could reach other dungeons. And gradually you were opening up the world. The first Legend of Zelda game, you basically had an open map and you could go and visit the dungeons in pretty much any order except for like 2 or 3 of them. And they were all basically just hidden around this world map for you to find. And then as long as you went to all 8 dungeons and gathered the 8 MacGuffins, you could go to the final dungeon and use the MacGuffins to kill the boss.
Yeah, looking through them and whatnot, Wind Waker was the only one I have to say that looked interesting to me.
Wind Waker is very open-ended. It does not have... My biggest disappointment with it is that it does not have a lot of dungeons, and I didn't realize how few dungeons it is. And actually, as I'm playing through it now, I'm realizing I don't think I ever beat this game. Suddenly, I hit parts, and I'm like, I don't remember this. But like my thing with the Zelda games is that they really shine in the dungeons, which are... There's actually a bunch of... I've been watching that YouTube series. I think I mentioned it a while ago, called Boss Keys.
Yeah, well, that's what got me started on this whole mess.
Yeah. The scenario design of the dungeons in the Legend of Zelda franchise is fantastic. And there's a lot of different ways that they design dungeons. Though it varies from game to game. But Wind Waker is very different. It does not have many dungeons. You just spend a lot of time going around the overworld. But at the same time, I think what I like about it is that it's not super open-ended. There are precisely 49 points of interest in the world. And, and they all have 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 or 4 interesting things to do, except for like, there's 1 or 2 like towns, and they have more interesting stuff to do. But there's a sense that you could really complete the world. You know what I mean? So it's not like here's a giant map, now go find the fun. It's like there is fun in this grid and this grid and this grid and this grid and this grid. Go sail here, have some fun here. Now go sail here. Have some fun here. There's these neat little treasure maps too. You find them and they have an outline of an island and an X that marks sunken treasure, so that you kind of have to match up the shape of the island to the treasure map and figure out where the treasure is. So it's all sorts of fun little stuff like that.
Cool.
And they did an HD remake on the Wii U. If you're looking to try a more traditional Zelda experience, there's basically 2 types of Zelda games. There are the top-down 2-dimensional ones, and then the 3D ones, which is third person.
Right.
To 3D. So top-down, the best you're going to get is if you play Link to the Past, which was the 3rd game in the series. And that I think is available on the Nintendo DS store as a remake. And if you're interested in the 3D ones, the best one you can play again on the DS is Ocarina of Time 3D, which I think 5th game in the series chronologically. Okay, chronologically is it's dangerous. By release date, 5th game in the series.
Right.
As far as all the story and the lore crap, though, it's so meaningless because each game hits all of the same basic beats.
Mm-hmm.
There is a bad guy. He wants to take over the world with the MacGuffins that the gods left. There is a hero and then there is a princess. And they each represent the 3 forces of power, wisdom, and courage. And then go gather 8 of something and then beat the boss. Or alternatively, the game started to follow the pattern of go find 3 of something. Okay, good job. Now go find 5 more of something.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a few deviations. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link was very different because it was a side-scroller. Link Between Worlds was a remake of Link to the Past that was very open-ended and very weirdly structured. And Wind Waker is very different from all the other ones. But yeah, you pretty much start anywhere.
Okay.
If you really have the patience for banging your head against a really hard, obtuse game, go back and play the first one. You liked the original Dragon Warrior. For all I know, you might like that.
Yeah, that's true. You never know.
One of the things about it was when they made the original Legend of Zelda, Shigeru Miyamoto was trying to capture. As a kid, he wandered around in the wilderness around his home. Like he would go exploring the woods and he would find a lake and, find various stuff in the Japanese countryside. And he would always get excited when he found this, and he wanted to create a game like that, where it's just like, here's a wilderness and there's all this interesting stuff to find. And he was actually very afraid about how the game was going to be received because there was nothing like it at the time. And it worked out really well, clearly. Because now there's umpteen million entries in the series, and people argue about how they all fit together in a chronological timeline. They were never meant to. They were all just excuses to keep telling the same story.
Right.
Magical elf kills dragon and saves princess. Done and done. Except for Wind Waker. Very different.
Okay. I will take that under advisement, sir. So, did you hear what happened on the internet today?
If this has anything to do with a government FISA memo, I am going to punch you.
No. This is far more important.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. You remember Mike Merles, right?
I know of someone by that name.
Yes. Somehow related to D&D in some way, yeah?
Yeah.
How about that Nathan Stewart guy?
I do not know a Nathan Stewart.
Okay.
Should I?
I don't know.
Nathan Stewart?
I have yet to determine how important he actually is.
Okay.
Apparently Nathan Stewart is involved with D&D's Twitch channel.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't know him.
Which is where Mike Merles made the announcement of the next book for Dungeons & Dragons today.
Oh, no kidding.
No kidding. I don't know if it was an official announcement or if Merlesy kind of goofed up or not.
Which would not be the first time.
It wouldn't be the first time. The WotC
specifically with Merles.
Yes, because WotC said the official announcement shortly after all this came out would be on Monday. Oh,
okay.
So I don't know if maybe Merles got his dates messed up or if he had permission to do it, and that's fine. I don't know. It's just that it's very hard to find any actual information on things right now. Because there's no official page up for this tome. Mm-hmm. Would you like to take a stab at guessing what the name of this thing is?
If I had to guess,
mm-hmm.
Well, okay. First, I need some background. Is this a module? Is it an adventure? Or is it a supplement?
It seems to be a supplement.
Okay. Then it is whatever the name is, it will involve some famous NPC from D&D's past.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will be the something prepositional or something preposition something.
Uh-huh.
Because, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Volo's Guide to Monsters.
Right.
So this would be, I don't know, who are the, Vecna's Book of Facts.
Okay.
Book of Secrets. Vecna's Book of Secrets.
Oh, right.
No, they wouldn't do something like that right after.
No, that'd be dumb.
Right. No, they would be. I don't know. Do we know anything?
Mordecanian's Tome of Foes.
I'm taking credit for that. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes.
Yes, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foam. Tome of Foams. Foam of Tomes.
Tome of...
Oh, man, what time is it?
It is too late. We also don't normally do this on a Friday night, so we have 2 extra days of exhaustion.
Right.
That we don't normally have in the week.
Mordecanian's Tome of Foes. Apparently, this is the project formerly known as Marathon.
Okay.
The in-house code name for it.
Right.
Okay.
Which means nothing.
Well, maybe not. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. Anyway, according to what I have been pointed at on Penguin Random House's website, it is a...
Okay, I'm clicking the link you have supplied me.
It is a $50 book.
That, of course, standard price point.
Which may be either 192 pages or 256 pages.
Okay.
Which is what Jeremy Crawford said on Twitter, but does not agree with what is on the Penguin Random House site.
That's interesting.
Isn't it just?
Mm-hmm.
Shall I read you the blurb?
Yes, by all means.
Alrighty, here we go. Discover the truth about the great conflicts of the D&D multiverse in this supplement for the world's greatest role-playing game. Are they not allowed to use their own name in their own products?
God only knows. They're probably afraid they'd have to sue themselves and take themselves off the DMs Guild. They don't even know what the law is anymore.
Okay. This tome is built on the writings of the renowned wizard from the world of Greyhawk, gathered over a lifetime of research and scholarship. In his travels to other realms and other planes of existence, he has made many friends and has risked his life an equal number of times to amass the knowledge contained herein. In addition to Mordenkainen's musings on the endless wars of the multiverse, the book contains game statistics for dozens of monsters, new demons and devils, several varieties of elves and Duragar, and a vast array of other creatures from throughout the planes of existence. You now know everything I know.
Okay. Which means we pretty much know exactly what this book is now.
It's Monster Manual 3.
We want to be... What?
It's Monster Manual 3.
Yeah. Essentially, that's what it is.
Or...
It will probably...
Or... Is it the Guide to the Planes?
No, I don't think it is.
You don't think so, huh?
If I had to guess, because of... See, it sounds to me like... Okay, here's what gets me. I have now pulled out Volo's Guide to Monsters.
Yes.
Okay, the esteemed lore master, Volothamp Gedar. Is that his full name? I had no idea.
I neither know nor care.
Volothamp Gedarm is back. He's written a fantastical dissertation covering some of the most iconic monsters in the world of Dungeons & Dragons. But the Sage of Shadowdale himself, Elminster, doesn't believe Volo gets some of the details right. Don't miss out as Volo and Elminster team up to illuminate the uninitiated on creatures both common and obscure. This book explores the stories and layers of various monsters, yada yada yada. Also included are game statistics for scores of monsters, which are ready to appear in D&D adventures as mighty friends or fearsome foes. Tell me that's not basically the same blurb. So what we are going to get is a book that starts off with a chapter that gives us, some fluffy stuff.
Right.
In Volo's Guide to Monsters, it was about monster lairs and treasure and lore about some of the most famous monsters. In this case, it's going to be lore, I would guess, about fiends and demons and also creatures of the Underdark, probably. Right. And then it's primarily going to be a book of monster stats. And then at the end, there'll probably be appendix of other fluff. I'm going to bet that it's basically the same exact format as Volo's Guide to Monsters, because it has basically the same blurb.
Okay, well, you've sucked all the excitement out of that.
Well, okay, but hold on a second.
Yes.
I like new books of monsters.
Oh, you do, huh?
I don't care about the fluff.
Oh.
Okay? I really don't. I don't... I don't run in D&D's world anyway.
Right.
D&D doesn't even run in D&D's world anyway. It has forgotten what D&D's world is.
Right.
But I like books of monsters. I like new monsters. So no, I'm perfectly happy. And if they're gonna, the other thing is this whole traveling the planes and fiends and devils, I don't believe that they can stick to a theme that well.
No?
No, I think that there's probably going to be a leaning toward demons, devils, and extraplanar threats.
Mm-hmm.
But those tend to skew fairly high level anyway, so they're going to have to fill it out with some low level stuff. And the fact they said, oh, also there's some varieties of elves in Duergar, that tells me, like, at that point they were trying to figure out what else is in the book. You know, it's like, what else can we put in the marketing?
Uh-huh.
What else is in here? So it's like, I'm going to guess there's some demons and devils, and then it's just a grab bag of other miscellaneous creatures. And again, I'm going to guess they went around the office and said, hey, does anybody have any monsters? We need to fill out a monster book. You know? But again, I'm not disparaging it. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is probably one that I will buy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there's a surprise.
I bought Volo's Guide to Monsters. I like having monster stats. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
So I remain excited despite my cynicism. I'm cynically excited.
You are excited and thrilled at the prospect.
You know what? I feel like I know exactly what I'm going to get, and I'm happy with that.
Okay. That's fine by me.
What would...
If you're excited, then I'm excited. Can't you tell?
You really should not link your moods to mine, sir.
No, I'm. Many
of my moods would have a deleterious effect on your blood pressure.
Right. I'm still holding out for the spaceship adventure.
Oh, you really want that one, huh?
Oh, I do. I want that so bad.
Barrier Peaks.
Yeah, Barrier Peaks.
Oi, okay, you can have it.
I want that so bad I can taste it.
Why don't you just write it yourself here?
Because I'm out of time.